Hello everybody. Today we're going to talk about solving one-step equations using addition and subtraction. So what is an equation? An equation is a mathematical statement indicating the left-hand side is equal or equivalent to the right-hand side. Okay? So an equation will always have an equal sign. So that's how you know something's an equation is given the problem, you see an equation in the problem. If you don't see, or excuse me, you see an equal sign, excuse me. If you see an equal sign in the problem. If you don't see an equal sign in the problem they give you, it is most likely an expression. So that's the difference between an expression and an equation. An expression is just something in algebra that has numbers and variables, where an equation is something in algebra that has numbers, variables, operations, etc. So, and expressions have operations as well. But again, the biggest difference is the equal sign. Equations always have an equal sign. So when solving equations, there's a golden rule. And a golden rule means it's very, very important. You got to always follow it. And that golden rule is whatever operation you do to one side of the equation, you must do to the other side. So an equation has an equal sign. It has two sides. You have your left-hand side and you have your right-hand side. Well, one way to think of an equation is like a scale or a balance or like a seesaw when you were a little kid. So let's say let's say we're assuming that these are, basketballs, and they are exactly the same basketball and exactly the same weight, and try not to laugh at my drawing ability. All right. So let's say I have three basketballs of equal weight on each side. Well, let's say that I take away two of these basketballs on the right-hand side. Well, in order to make this balance or scale balanced again, or seesaw, I could either put those two basketballs back, or I could take two basketballs away from the other side. So notice that whatever operation we did to one side, we had to do the same exact thing to the other side to keep it balanced. Now, we could have put those two basketballs back, but we wouldn't be changing the balance or the scale at all. So, solving the equation, you want to find out the answer for x. So whatever we do to one side, we do to the other side. Or conversely, let's say I have one basketball on each side. Well, if I put three more basketballs on this side, now there's four on the left, and this side would sink down, right? Well, I don't want it to sink down, so in order to make this balanced level again, I have to put three more basketballs on the other side. Okay? So that's what you have to do for equations. Whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other side. So now let's solve some. And all the equations for this lesson will involve addition and subtraction. So you're going to be using your integer rules for addition. Okay, so if they have the same sign, add them up and keep that sign. If they have different signs and you're adding, subtract and then keep the sign of the larger number. So let's say I'm asked to solve the equation x minus 4 equals negative 21. So what we want to do is we want to find the value of x right there, that when I plug it in for x, when I subtract 4 from it, it equals negative 21. Now, I realize that some of you can do these equations in your head, but I really want you to show your steps because it's going to be so critical that when the equations get larger that you're showing your work and then able to follow your processes to get the right answer. So if you're not doing it with mental math, I draw a line through the equal sign. That separates our two sides. Now, right now, 4 is being taken away from x. So in order to get x by itself, you want to get the variable by itself, you want to do the inverse operation. So the inverse operation of subtracting 4 to both sides, or taking away 4 from x, would be adding 4 to both sides. Now remember, whatever you do to one side, you got to do to the other side. Okay? So now on the left-hand side, minus 4 and plus 4, they cancel off because they give an answer of 0. So all we're left with is x. And on the other side, all we have to do is our math. Since we're adding a positive and a negative, we subtract and then keep the sign of the bigger number. So 21 minus 4 is 17. But the bigger number is that 21, so it's going to be negative 17 is our final answer. Okay? And if we check it, we can put negative 17 right there. Negative 17 minus 4 does, in fact, equal negative 21, so it does check out. That's exactly how you do one-step equations. Okay, so let's look at another example. So let's say we have negative 5 equals x plus 9. So it's always a good idea, and I know these are smaller equations, but you'll see as they get larger, to draw a line through the equal sign. That separates your two sides. And if we look, our variable is actually on the right-hand side of the equation. So what you want to do is you want to look and see what operation is happening to that variable. So right now, 9 is being added to x on that side. So we want to do the inverse operation to both sides, which would actually be to subtract 9. So whatever operation is happening in the variable, do the inverse. Okay? So we're going to subtract 9 from both sides. So on the right-hand side of the variable is these cancel because a positive 9 minus 9, that gives you 0, so we're just left with x. And now we have negative 5 minus 9 here. That's like adding two negative numbers. You could do a subtraction problem and add the opposite. But when you have two negative numbers on the same side like that, it's like adding two negatives. So negative 5 plus negative 9 is negative 14. So x equals negative 14, or negative 14 equals x. That's the same thing. If we want to check it, well, negative 14 plus 9 does equal negative 5, so it does check out. Awesome. Okay, so let's say we're solving for x again. That will be, or solve for the variable. That's what the direction will say. Solve for x or solve for the variable, because there might be some different at x. So we have negative 6 plus x equals negative 33. So draw your line through the equal sign. And I want you to ask yourself what operation is happening to the variable on the side it's on. This is a little tricky. So on the side it's on the left-hand side, we're adding negative 6. Now adding negative 6 is like taking away 6. And the reason why we know that is because, look, the 6 is negative, right? So we want to do the inverse operation here and actually add 6 to both sides. And that does work because when we say just x is left, that's a positive x. So if the x is positive, you're in good shape. You always want a positive x. So we'll bring down our x, and we just do the math over here. We know that negative 6 plus 6 was 0. That's why that canceled. So negative 33 plus 6, we're going to subtract, keep the sign of the larger number. That's the larger one, negative 27. Okay, and you could check it by plugging that in. And negative 6 plus negative 27 does, in fact, equal negative 33. Hopefully this is making sense. Not too bad, right? But we do want to see this work right here. And again, we realize some of you can do some of these equations in your head, but as the equation gets larger, it's so imperative and important that you show all your work carefully so you could follow your work and do your work in a logical manner that allows you to get the right answer. Okay, and our last one for today. So we have negative 19 equals 5 minus x. Now, to be honest, I am throwing this equation in here. Actually a two-step equation. It's not a one-step, and I'll show you why right now. If you identify the x, look at the sign in front of it. It's actually a negative x, right? When we solve equations, we want a positive x, positive 1x. So we're going to have to do another step to get rid of that negative. So let's actually get that negative x by itself first. So in order to do that, we have to look in the 5 here. If we look at the sign in front of it, it's actually a positive 5. You don't see that because it's the first term on that right-hand side, but we're actually going to subtract 5 from both sides to get rid of that 5. So now we have a negative x on the right-hand side, and this is like adding two negative numbers, negative 24. Now this will be tomorrow's lesson, but if you think about it, it kind of makes sense that x would be positive 24, right? Because a negative x equals negative 24. There's actually a 1 being multiplied to x, and we'll talk more about this tomorrow. But if you have a negative x, that's like a negative 1x, divide both sides by negative 1. And then you get a positive 24 over here. So if you are solving these problems and you have a negative x or a negative sign in front of your x, you got to do one more additional step, divide by negative 1, and then you'll get x totally alone, which is what we want. We want a positive x. Okay? Okay, so let's see how you did with this lesson. So here's two problems I want you to do on your own. So do these in your notes. So go ahead and pause the video and do these in your notebook, and then check them when you're done. So the next 15 seconds or 20 seconds will be blank. Again, do these problems on your own. Okay, so hopefully you solve these on your own. For the first one, x is on the left-hand side, and it's being, or 18 is being taken away from x. So the inverse operation of taking away 18 is adding 18 to both sides. So now we get 0 on that side, so we're just left with an x. And then we do negative 4 plus 18, which is like subtracting. 18 minus 4 is 14, and keep the sign of the larger number, which is 18, so positive 14 for x. Awesome. And if you plug that in, 14 minus 18 does in fact equal negative 4, so it does check out. And then if we look at number 2, well, x on the right-hand side this time, and we have negative 1 plus x. Well, the x is positive, so that's nice. We'll draw a line through the equal sign. But we have negative 1 plus x. That's like subtracting 1. And we know that because of the negative sign in front of the 1. So we actually want to get rid of that by adding 1 to both sides. So these will cancel. We're left with x on the right-hand side. And negative 7 plus 1, we're going to subtract again. Keep the sign of a larger number. Negative 6. Okay? If you check it, negative 6 plus negative 1 does in fact give you negative 7. So hopefully you found this video lesson helpful. Guys, there is a wealth of resources on solving one-step equations using addition and subtraction, or solving one-step equations. So if you have any questions, don't be afraid to, do a Google search or check out those credible math resources and websites I shared with you on Google Classroom. But if you have any questions as well, feel free to let Mrs. Snyder and I know. Have a fantastic day, everybody.